Harada is a brave but slow virgin who couldn't get any baddies despite being the heir of a wealthy family. However, after learning that he was actually adopted into the family, he decides to stop going for random chicks and starts getting freaky with his stepsisters instead. This story starts with Harada asking Shin for Rizz tips so he can finally get some action. After Shin says he just has to go with the flow to get a girlfriend like his, Harada loses it and says he doesn't know what the flow means. Shin then asks why he is even bothered by girls when he can technically have anyone he wants as their family's heir. As Harada tries to mask low testosterone level with a stupid speech about true romance, their sisters all come out and take turns guessing that Harada was definitely looking for advice to deal with the fact that it's the same size as their pinky. When he tells them to mind their own business, Aoka continues with the insults, so Shin decides to add a little spice by saying that Harada was talking about the size of their milk bags. After sending her dog to bite chunks of skin off his body, she tells him to get help because regular brothers don't obsess over their sister's plot. Harada then claims that he has only ever seen them as ugly meat sacks, but then Aoka asks if that was the case during his incident with Kotono, when Banri finally steps in as the oldest to defend him. Minami also admits that he isn't all bad, so he tries to give her a hug, but receives a punch that almost paralyzes him. Just then, Aoka reminds them that it's Kotono's birthday on Saturday, and they all agree to go out together after the birthday dinner before heading to the train station for school. Later on, Shin meets up with Harada in the men's room to talk about how everyone in school acts like they have the dream family, when in reality they just get bullied by all 5 sisters and have almost no way of fighting back. Shin also points out the fact that most people suspect that they actually clap in secret, and when Harada says nothing like that will ever happen, Shin reminds him of Kotono's confession. Hours later, Harada considers sending a friend request to his crush, but chickens out right before Aoka comes in to ask for his notes. As she reads through them, he notices that jugs have changed a bit and says she should start acting her age, but then she calls him stupid for thinking she needs to be civilized up in the same house that they all grew up in. The next moment, she asks about his crush and says Shin told her all about it, so he reluctantly tells her the girl's name. After saying that they are actually on the same committee, she tries to set them up, but he tells her to focus on finding someone that can put up with her irritating personality instead. On Kotono's birthday several days later, he puts on a suit and waits until dinner time before heading out and seeing Aoka, who then manages to squeeze out a compliment before heading down. At the dinner table moments later, Minami tries to apologize for losing her AirPod, but she gets pissed and continues cussing until they both start arguing. After Harada tells them to stop, their dad, Kaname, finally shows up and thanks them all for waiting. Just as they make a toast to Kotono, Kaname decides to drop a bomb and says they are all actually adopted. Harada immediately asks for an explanation, so he further explains that while Minami and Shin are actually twins, the rest of them are all unrelated, after also saying that he promised their mother to keep it a secret until the right time. He continues the dinner like nothing happened, but they all drift away from reality. Shortly after that, a maid tries to serve them tea, but Banri tells her not to worry and proceeds to serve it herself before Aoka starts talking about how she feels betrayed. After Seiha and Minami tell her to stop overthinking it, they ask Banri if she knew about it since she has been around longer. She then claims to have forgotten most of their childhood years and says the fact that they are all basically orphans who hit the jackpot should not change anything about their relationship. With that said, they all head inside to rest, but after a couple minutes of overthinking, Harada decides to cool off with a bath upon seeing all the plot covers in the laundry basket. He starts to accept that nothing has really changed until he locks eyes with Kotono in the bath. He immediately apologizes and turns to leave, but she asks for help with her back, so he ends up scrubbing while Shin meets up with Aoka to talk, as she starts to wonder how the sudden revelation will affect the fact that she has always treated Harada like her twin brother. Shin claims that the only thing they really have to worry about is how society will react when it becomes public news. Meanwhile, Kotono has just stopped Harada from going out, leaving him frozen in shock as he fears that she wants him as her birthday present.
Yeah, boy.
While he tries to get his sword under control, Shin tells Aoka that they can actually start a family harem because the law doesn't stop unrelated siblings from getting married.
No, he's got a point.
Naturally, she gets disgusted by the idea and asks if he has just been waiting for the perfect opportunity to unleash his creepy nature. After he immediately puts his guard back up and claims to only have positive thoughts of her as a sister, Aoka foolishly believes him and starts talking about the night Arata told her to cover up her melons. While chills run down her spine, when Shin tells her to cut him some slack, she asks if he knows what actually happened between him and Kotono, but he refuses to say anything because Arata made him swear to keep the truth to himself. Aoka then says that they all know he would never actually do anything to her, and further explains that they have just been using it to tease him. After giving it some thought, he tells her that Kotono suddenly decided to confess her feelings to him that night and refused to take no for an answer when he turned her down. As he tried to pull her away, they all entered the game room and thought he was the one making a move on her, so he decided to tell only Shin so the girls wouldn't trouble Kotono. Upon hearing this, Aoka tells him that they need to do something about Kotono, but Shin reminds her that she is still young and might just be confusing respect for love. When Aoka tells him to stop acting like he is some kind of wise mage, he agrees that Kotono's feelings might reach new heights, especially with the truth of their family finally being revealed. Back in the bath, Arata has just asked Kotono if some of the steam entered her head, but she responds by confessing her love again and refusing to let go of him. When he tells her to stop thinking anything can ever happen between them, she replies that she has already read about the implications of loving a brother, but still refuses to give up, so he pulls her away and explains that she is just confused. He then promises to continue looking out for her until the day her brain grows past phase 1 and fixes whatever went wrong with her ability to understand her own emotions. He also decides to keep what just happened to himself and turns to leave, so she walks back into the bath and says she has never met anyone capable of being so heartless and caring at the same time. Meanwhile, Konim tries to convince himself that wrecking the entire family was worth it by focusing on the promise he made to his wife. But Banri interrupts his meditation to talk about it. By then, Arata has just gotten back to his room and finds Seiya on his bed, so she asks if she got lost. When she asks where he is coming from, he quickly lies about needing to take a walk.
Cap.
But she refuses to believe him and walks around for a bit before talking about how they all played rock, paper, scissors to pick rooms and gave him the smallest one while Aoka got the largest. As she continues talking about random stuff they have all experienced as a family, he tries to figure out how that is connected to her sudden decision to play detective in his room. The next moment, she pushes him back onto the bed and leans in to monitor his heart rate while he starts to wonder why God is constantly testing him.
What more do you want from me?
After finally pulling away from his chest, she says he isn't the creep she once thought he was, so he asks why she is trying to turn him into one. As soon as she says she was in the bath when Kotono ambushed him, he throws her off before she commends him on acting civilized despite the temptation he had to deal with. She further says that although Kotono might just be confusing normal sibling love for something else, their dad's sudden confession might have pushed her over the edge of sanity. Arata still tries to figure out why all that caused her to spontaneously straddle his glizzy, so she explains that it was the only way to make sure he doesn't actually see them as potential lovers, even if they aren't real siblings.
What?
When he asks why she couldn't use a less creepy approach, she claims that method was the easiest because she doesn't have any feelings for him. She goes on to remind him that not being siblings means they might start ending up in freaky situations, but also tells him not to worry about her because she still sees him as an extremely ugly caveman. After reminding him that she is still his older sister and demanding for a little more respect, she leaves but takes a moment outside to make sure her little experiment didn't actually cause her to get any weird feelings, just as she manages to make herself believe that being so close to him meant nothing. Minami shows up and asks why she is outside his room, but says it's nothing and immediately walks away. The next day, Arata wakes up with the stress of their new reality still weighing on his shoulders before getting ready for school. The moment he leaves the room, he sees Banri in a lab uniform with Kotono and asks if she has finally lost it. So she explains that she is just trying it on before asking if he likes how it brings out the shape of her plot. When he calls her stupid for asking such a question so early in the morning, she tells Kotono not to feel bad about the fact that he hates them. So he tries to apologize, but gets even more confused when she tries to strip Kotono right in front of him. On the way out, Shin then tells him that she was probably trying to lighten the mood so they can go back to the way things were. Moments later, two random guys see the girls walking to school together and starts gossiping about their perfect drumsticks, as they go on to say that they have the most perfect family. Arata and Shin try to figure out how they will respond when the truth comes out. Just then, they realize that the girls are actually professional liars because they are all acting like it's another average day. While Shin and the girls go on about their day in school like absolutely nothing happened, Arata spends the entire day brooding until the last period. Upon getting to his locker to pack up, he continues reminding himself that the girls are still his sisters to make sure he doesn't start thinking of them in a freaky way.
What do you mean by that?
Just then, Minami shows up, so he asks if she skipped practice, but she claims to have the day off for once. As they walk together, he commends her on managing to stay consistent with her training despite all the pressure she is under as the school's hottest tennis protege. Just as she also tries to give him a compliment, three girls run up to get pictures with her and start glazing harder than unemployed Taylor Swift fans. When they finally leave, he asks why girls are also thirsting over her, so she tells him about a photo she took with a guy's uniform, which apparently made all the girls think she also likes to clap kitties. After wondering why he has never experienced such luck, he suggests going out and enjoying her day off. But then she explains that it was her coach who gave her the day off because she failed a placement test. This causes him to remember that she has always been the dumbest in the family, so he offers to help her study before taking her to a restaurant. While explaining the basics, he takes a close look at her face and sees why almost everyone wants a piece of her cake. She then asks for a detailed explanation of the difficult part. But as he breaks it down in ways her overactive mind can understand, she gets distracted. When he finishes, she acts like every word he said got carved into her brain, so he gives her a quick test and she proceeds to fail every single problem. As he starts to accept that she is a lost cause, she grabs the microphone to sing, and he ends up getting won over by her free spirit. Several minutes later, they head out. But while trying to say that she needs another study session, he sees his crush hanging out with someone else and hides. On the way home moments later, she admits that singing with him was actually fun, but he quickly reminds her that they were meant to be working on her rapidly diminishing IQ points. When she says their dinner with Kanem was insane, he asks for her thoughts on the current situation, and she suggests talking with him again to figure out who their real parents actually are. As she expresses a deep concern for Kotono, seeing as she is the youngest and most sensitive, Arata starts to think that she isn't completely useless, but reminds her to keep the whole thing secret so they don't attract unnecessary attention. She goes on to say that not being actual siblings doesn't change anything about the relationship they have all built as a family, and this causes his belief in her to increase until she suddenly tells him not to worry about the fact that his crush is already giving another dude the slurp special.
Huh?
He immediately asks how she knows about it, so she tells him how Alka blabbed about his pathetic love life and suggests focusing on being a good older brother instead of trying to lose his V card. After patting his head and telling him to cheer up, she asks if they can play a game at home, but he refuses and says she should focus on fixing whatever is wrong with her head. At the house shortly after that, she gives Alka a box of cakes and hands over her AirPods before saying that she found it in her clubroom. After she apologizes for losing it, Alka gives it back to her as a hand-me-down and makes her promise not to be so careless before asking for help with the cakes because she can't eat it all on her own. Several days later, Arata completes his Ashton Hall morning routine, and on the way out, he sees Kotono, who then greets him and quickly leaves without saying anything else. This causes him to think that she might be over her abnormal feelings, but then Seiha startles him before reminding him to address her with respect like she said the other night. After he assures her that there is nothing to worry about in regards to the situation with Kotono, Minami jumps in like a caffeine junkie who just got their first hit of the day. while reminding him of the way she humiliated him in the game room the previous night. She calls him senpai, and Seiha immediately asks why, so she explains how he always tries to act like the reincarnation of Master Oogway. At school later that morning, Arata sees Lala from across the hall and stops to avoid her as usual, before Aoka suddenly whispers "I love you" into his ear.
What do you mean by that?
He immediately pulls back to make sure she is still in her right senses. But when he asks why she said that, she asks if he has tried saying those words to Lala. He then tells her that it would be completely stupid and humiliating because she would obviously reject him for her boyfriend, after she says that his overthinking is going to keep him single until his magnum withers away. Her friends call out to her, so she runs off to meet them. While he watches, she starts talking about their plan to take Kotono out to a park and celebrate her birthday together before offering to get a couple for them if they want. As her friends start acting like she is some kind of mythical princess, Arata wonders what would happen if he were to ever tell them how she acts like an unhinged psychopath at home. The next moment, one of them sneaks a peek at him and says that he is handsome. So the others also take a look and admit that they were always too intimidated by his physique to notice that he is actually attractive. When one of them teases the idea of becoming Aoka's sister-in-law, she tells them to forget about it because Arata doesn't have the slightest clue of how to treat a lady. She goes on to call him an ape that only evolved in his outward appearance while still having prehistoric brain matter. But then she also points out how organized he can be and slowly starts adding more compliments without even realizing that her face now looks similar to a stop sign. When they ask why she is blushing, she immediately starts walking off and claims they are already late for class, while Arata gets lost in thought and prays that nothing weird will happen when they all go to the park. Days later, they all get excited after finally reaching there, so Banri reminds them that they have to stay together and make sure Kotono enjoys every second. Right then, the mascot shows up, and Minami immediately takes off running with Aoka. So Banri and Arata beg the others to stay put so the both of them can go get food. Minutes later, they both return to the exact same spot and find absolutely no one. After seeing that they didn't even consider staying with the mascot, they both find a place to sit, and Arata spends a couple minutes calling them before giving up, when Banri suddenly says they should both go on a date.
Yeah, boy.
He reminds her that they should all be celebrating Kotono's birthday, but she tells him not to worry because they will eventually run into each other along the way. She then makes him eat all the food by himself before grabbing his arm and expressing how happy she is to be going on a date with a hot beefed-up Chad like him. However, he completely ignores the compliment and continues staring at her jugs until she pulls him close to ask if they are keeping his arm warm.
Hot diggity dog!
The cultured virgin then tries to act like he has no idea what she is talking about, but she tells him to stop acting like he hasn't been craving some milk. After pulling away from her to protect his sanity, he notices the countless number of simps staring at her, right before she promises to let him grab them when they get back home. Once again, he acts like he is repulsed by her plot, but while climbing up a flight of stairs moments later, he continues fighting the urge to dunk his head in between her drumsticks until he slips at the last step. Shortly after that, they get on a ride, and he spends most of it trying to keep his food down before eventually getting a hold of Shin and learning that they are on the other side of the park. After Shin tells the rest of the girls where Arata and Banri are, Aoka starts acting like they betrayed Kotono to go have fun, until Seiha reminds her that they were the ones who ran off first. They then take turns talking about how Banri is definitely taking every opportunity to tease him, but when Aoka notices how comfortable it's making Kotono, she changes the topic and asks which ride she wants to go on next. Moments later, Arata and Banri find a new spot to take a break, and after he tells her about Shin and the others, she decides to go find them after her snack break, when he takes that as an opportunity to ask how she has been dealing with what their dad said. She admits that it has been troubling her, but says she will need to get more answers from him before making up her mind on what to do. She then notices the weird look on his face and asks if there is something else he wants to talk about, but after thinking of how she might react to what Kotono and Seiha did, he decides to keep it to himself and says he just doesn't want their relationship as siblings to change. As she immediately starts rubbing his head, he tells her to stop but suddenly remembers that she has actually always been a little overprotective. After saying that she will continue protecting their family, she tries to get up, but a random girl suddenly slips and throws her drinks, so he jumps in to protect her. He then tells the girl not to worry, and as Banri starts drying off as much soda as she can, he promises to help her protect the rest of their siblings. The next moment, Shin and the girls show up and immediately start asking why he is soaked, so he explains what happened to stop them from worrying. Minami then suggests taking one last ride together, and on the way there, Banri suddenly grabs Arata's hand so they can run inside together. Several minutes after sundown, they finally finish with the rides, but Aka still tries to continue the celebration by putting on a performance with help from Minami. When Arata suddenly says he has to take a leak, Shin and Kotono decide to go with him as well, and as soon as they get far enough, Seiha tells the others all about what Kotono did the other night. At first, they all think she just made it up and say it's a bit late to come up with lame jokes, but then she explains exactly what she saw when she entered the bath, and they all go from shocked to genuinely concerned. Like all women, they immediately try to blame Arata.
Women.
And say he couldn't keep his magnum under control. But then Seiha says he was the one in actual danger. After explaining how he talked Kotono down, she assures them that there is nothing to worry about with him because she made sure of it. When Aka asks how on earth she can be so sure, she casually describes how she straddled his glizzy and paid close attention to his heart rate to see if he would get excited.
What?
While Banri gets shocked by the fact that he could stay calm despite being in such a plotful situation, Aka tries to wrap her head around everything she just heard. Seiya then says they have to come up with a solution, but Banri tells them all to relax because it's definitely just a phase. After Minami also agrees that Kotono might just be confused, Seiya suggests keeping the discussion to themselves so Kotono won't feel embarrassed around them. Just then, Aka decides to tell them about the gaming room incident and completely changes the discussion as they all start to realize that Kotono might actually have feelings for him. Seiya then says that the revelation from their dad might have just given her every reason to fully commit to her love for him. However, Banri still says that she is going through a phase that will wear off as long as Arata doesn't do anything stupid. She also tells them that after the dinner with their dad, she couldn't stop thinking about everything and went to ask him a couple more questions. They immediately ask if there is more to know, but she says all he told her was that they were all orphans, and her parents in particular were never even found. After they all agree to keep the situation under wraps, unless Kotono acts up, Arata returns with her and Shin. As they all start heading home, he begins to feel confident that their relationship won't get ruined by one silly bathroom mistake. Minutes later, Arata ends up waiting outside a store while Shin and the girls decide to make one last stop at the park's merch store. Just as he sees someone that looks similar to Lala and freaks out, Aka comes out to check on him, and they end up taking a walk together. At one point, she stops and says they have to talk about the fact that they were never actually twins, but he tells her not to bother because he will never stop seeing her as his twin sister. Regardless, she continues talking about all the times they believed they had twin telepathy before suddenly saying that she loves him. At school the previous day, Arata met up with Shin for the usual talk and felt a little surprised when he asked if he had ever thought about their sisters like they were regular chicks. He initially tried to play dumb, but after Shin kept saying that he had to have at least thought about them in an unholy way once, he claimed to have never even considered any of them as hot.
Cap.
Shin then said he was already getting all the freaky action he needed from his girl, and when Arata asked for details, he used that as an opportunity to clown him for still being a sad, lonely virgin. The next moment, he apologized for telling Aoka about everything that went down with Kotono, but Arata was already sure that Aoka still saw him as a depraved creep until Shin explained that she always knew he could never clap his own sister. Arata then told him that suddenly learning the truth about their relationship doesn't change the fact that they will always be siblings. Upon hearing that, Shin told him that everyone else in school would definitely see things differently if he ever chose to blab about it, but also promised that he would not tell a soul.
Cap.
Back at the park, Alka tells Arata that she will always be proud to say that he is her twin brother, despite the fact that he is stupid enough to think 100 guys can actually defeat a gorilla. This causes him to realize that she wasn't confessing to wanting his glizzy.
What do you mean by that?
So he continues listening as she commends him on handling the situation with Alka like a good older brother. After he asks why she can't show her sweet side more often, she switches back to her hateful alter ego and leaves to use the ladies' room while he thinks back to that first question Shin asked and struggles to keep his freaky thoughts under control. In the training room the following day, Arata tries to take his abs to the next level, but then Minami shows up, which surprises him because she usually trains in the evening. When she says she just woke up a little too early, he gets excited to train with her. But she tells him to tone down the energy because she is still in the process of waking up. After sitting on the yoga ball, she asks why he never skips training since it's not like he has any talent or skill to be an athlete. He then reminds her of the years their dad spent forcing him to train and says he just can't stop because he has developed a nasty case of body dysmorphia. As he starts his stretch routine, she remembers how they all started looking for Alka at the souvenir store last night because she had not picked a stuffed animal to buy. Minami offered to go find her, but the moment she saw them both, Alka said the 3 magic words to Arata, leaving her in a state of shock. When she suddenly starts freaking out over finding a way to ask him about it, he asks if she took too much coffee after waking up, but she tells him not to worry and proceeds to perform a set of chest flies with the outrageous form. The next moment, she finally asks if anything happened with Alka, but when he asks what she means, she tells him to forget about it if he doesn't remember anything worth talking about. This only increases his curiosity, so he admits that they have both been fighting a lot lately and apologizes if it's making her uncomfortable. After thanking him for the talk, she gets up to leave and says she will complete her training later on. Moments later, he completes the session and tries to figure out why she asked about Alka on his way to the bath. Once there, he sees Seiha changing right in front of the door and immediately hides his brick behind the wall before asking if she forgot how to lock the door. She then asks why he is acting like he hasn't seen her changing before.
What do you mean by that?
But he claims to have just been shocked seeing her like that, so she apologizes while taking off her plot cover before heading into the shower. He then walks in to drop his towel in the laundry basket, but upon seeing her ring on the table without a necklace around it, he asks if it finally fits her finger. She replies that it's still a bit loose and further explains that she takes it off before the shower to make sure nothing happens to it, as it's the most valuable item they all use to remember their mom. In his room later that morning, he realizes that going hard in the gym isn't always a good thing, before Banri suddenly shows up and starts acting like she hasn't seen his room before. After he tells her to drop the act, she admits to being shocked by his organizational skills, but says there is no way he doesn't have something weird in his room before opening his browser history and finding a game that teaches Rizzless virgins the right way to massage their meat sabers. He immediately snatches the laptop and tries to figure out why she is suddenly in his room until she joins him on the bed and asks if they can go on a date. Several minutes later, they end up outside a phone store and she reminds him that he has always wanted to get his phone upgraded before squeezing his arm into her melons.
Yeah, boy.
After he tells her to stop always teasing him, she starts heading inside and he continues trying to figure out what she wants. Shortly after that, a salesperson shows him the latest iPhone and acts like a different charging port is the greatest innovation of the century. Luckily, Arata easily accepts her lies like every other iPhone user. But after the lady leaves to get his new phone ready, Banri asks why he doesn't care about the phone's color. He then says he doesn't care about outward appearances, and she commends him on having a progressive mind, but also tells him not to apply the same mentality when choosing a partner because getting a baddie with a massive bunda will keep him happy even if she turns out to be a toxic lunatic.
He's got a point.
Just then, the sales lady returns to tell them about a discount deal for couples, but as soon as he tries to explain their relationship, Banri grabs him from behind to act like they are a match made in heaven.
Yeah, boy.
On the way out after getting the phone, she continues teasing the idea of being an actual couple, but he stays silent and hopes to figure out what game she is actually playing. She then sees an ice cream spot and excitedly runs over to get some for the both of them. While licking it, she asks if they should have bought it for everyone else, but he tells her not to bother because it would have melted by the time they get back. She then reminds him of the time Minami ate Kotono's ice cream and got into a fight with Aoka because of it, as she also reminds him that they started calling Kotono the Closet Fairy because of how she always hides wherever there is a fight. Arata tells her not to make fun of Kotono when she always had a panic attack whenever they talked about ghosts. Upon seeing that he just brought her trauma back, he changes the topic and says they would probably spend all day outside if they were to list out all the crazy fights that happened growing up. This causes Banri to realize that nothing has really changed between them, so she asks if he has anything he wants to talk about and claims that she just wants to make sure her little brother is okay. While he says she has nothing to worry about, Kotono scrolls through all the pictures they took at the park before Banri sends a pic from their ice cream date to the group. She initially tries to compliment him, but deletes the text and decides to distract herself by studying instead. By then, they have just finished with the ice creams, so Banri asks if he wants to go anywhere else before suddenly getting a text that changes her mood. When he asks if she is okay, she says that they have to end the date because something just came up. But then he asks why she can't just get a boyfriend to go on dates with instead of him. After a moment of shock, she pats his head and tells him not to worry about that before heading out and giving Minami a call to say that they still don't have anything to worry about because he didn't give off any hints of being in love with Aoka. Minami then thanks her for checking and drops the call before wondering if it is actually possible to misunderstand the words that came out of Aoka's mouth. Despite still having doubts, she decides to text Banri back saying that there is definitely no way Aoka asked him out, but she accidentally sends it to the group chat. After she immediately deletes it, Aoka walks in and nearly gives her a heart attack, but after she tells her to hurry up and leaves, Minami becomes convinced that no one saw it. Meanwhile, Kotono has just received the shock of her life because she saw it before Minami could hit delete. While eating dinner the following night, Arata notices Seiha's sour mood and remembers that she had the exact same look at the train station after school. Shortly after dinner, he climbs up the stairs only to find her zoned out again, so he asks if she has anything on her mind and says she can always talk to him if she wants. The next moment, he tells her to forget it, to avoid sounding weird, but she accepts the offer. However, he ends up confused when she asks to play Body Twister.
What?
Instead of having an actual conversation, when he asks why she wants to play the one game that always leads to ferocious backshots. She casually admits that her heart skipped a beat during the freaky test she performed on him the other day. She further explains how confused she has been ever since and says that playing the game will show if she was just out of breath or if she actually wants to recreate a classic step bro scene from the hub.
What do you mean by that?
He then asks if she has finally lost her mind, but she tells him to relax because this is the only way they can figure out what is actually going on between them. The next moment, she starts the game, and he reluctantly joins while making sure to stay as far away from her as possible, when she reminds him that the whole purpose of the game is to get close to each other. He starts fighting demons as she inches closer with her jugs looking like they are about to pop out.
Yeah, boy.
Right then, Arata realizes that he is just overreacting to the whole thing, so he decides to play it cool and believes he will be fine because there's no way she would actually risk getting clapped just for a stupid test. To his greatest surprise, she goes even further by opening her drumsticks. And just as he manages to regain control of his mind, he learns that he now has to step on the circle right under her cakes. Despite moving as slowly as possible, he still ends up kicking her right in the juice box, but she pretends like it was nothing and starts giving him a lecture on the science of love. Just when he thinks the worst is over, she turns over with her dump truck pointing right at his face before suddenly dropping it right on his face. The next moment, she starts wrapping up the sheet and claims to now be sure that she wants nothing to do with his inexperienced glizzy before thanking him for the test and leaving. Just a few minutes later, Aoka walks in and asks why he was making a lot of noise, but he tells her not to worry about it, so she asks if he is free for a little game. Unlike her freaky older sister, she quickly sets up the PlayStation for an intense match and proceeds to spend the first couple minutes smoking him while he focuses on her level of excitement and accepts that she has actually changed a lot from the violent nutcase he grew up with. However, when she makes the unfortunate mistake of clowning him for taking so many losses, he decides to lock in and annihilates her character within seconds of each new match. The next moment, she says she has to take a leak, but suddenly starts choking him from behind for going that far just to humiliate her. Despite all his pleading for her to stop, she increases her grip, so he decides to get serious and ends up pinning her to the ground with both their hands interlocked. Upon seeing the innocent look on her face, he starts to panic, but plays it cool by saying that he warned her, and she responds by saying she didn't realize he was finally becoming a man. She then gets up and claims to be tired of the game before walking out and taking a moment to control the rush of emotions he just triggered. While she goes up to her room to think, he continues replaying what just happened until he gets fed up and leaves without realizing that Kotono was in the closet this entire time. After school the following day, Koname calls Arata to his office to ask how they have all been doing since he dropped the news on them, and after Arata claims that nothing has really changed, Koname suddenly asks if he has fallen in love yet.
Starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Meanwhile, the girls have just finished the latest episode of their favorite romance series, but as they start talking about all the different possibilities for the MC, Kotono isolates herself and tries to think of her next step, considering everything she has seen over the last few days. Several minutes later, they all get tired of the gossip and start heading inside, but she stops them and claims to still be in love with Arata. Banri then says that they all know she loves her older brother, but she tells her to stop pretending like she is still little and says she wants to get married to him since they are not even real siblings. She takes it a step further by calling them all rivals and claiming to be ready to fight for his heart. Meanwhile, Arata has just asked Koname why he is suddenly interested in his romantic life, and he claims to just be looking out, so Arata admits that he still has no luck in the love department. When Koname tells him that it isn't always easy to find the right one, Arata asks why he chose their mum, and he immediately says it's because her cakes moved better than prime ice spice. After quickly correcting himself and saying it was all about her loving personality.
Cap.
Koname reminds him of a special room he promised to show them when the time is right. Arata then tells him that they have always thought it led to a top-secret bunker before suddenly switching the topic to a speech about how proud he is to be his son. He also promises to make sure his siblings all have a happy life regardless of their relationship and tells Koname not to worry about anything before heading out. Days later, Arata goes out for a run and returns right around the same time Minami decides to leave for an early training session. The moment they run into each other, she forgets how to act like a normal person and says she has to get to practice on time. However, as she tries to run off, he asks if she is okay because he noticed that she has been a little off ever since the other night. This causes her to think he might figure out what happened with Kotono, so she claims to be perfectly fine before running off. While he tries to figure out what her deal is, Banri starts interrogating the dog because of his reckless eating, until Arata walks in and asks why she is already dressed. After she tells him about something important she needs to look into at college, he also starts cussing the dog out for eating too much. This ends up being his worst mistake, as the dog suddenly decides to attack him for its morning exercise. Just then, Shin comes out, so Banri apologizes for not being able to make him breakfast, but he tells her not to worry before asking if she has any idea of what they can do with Arata's body. On the school court several minutes later, Minami enters the zone and leaves everyone else stunned by how smoothly she handles every counter. While they try to learn a thing or two from her incredible focus, she continues fighting the memory of Kotono's confession until the end of practice. She then tries to go rest, but 3 of her biggest fans start begging for tips to improve their game. After telling them a bunch of useless information that leaves them more confused than before, she spots a senior named Now and asks for their usual friendly match. Now immediately gets psyched up to defeat her, but after just a few minutes of running around the court, she loses, to nobody's surprise, and joins Minami on the bench. When Minami says she has missed playing with her, Now tells her to get used to it because she will be graduating after the upcoming tournament, which means they might not get to see each other again until Minami becomes a pro player. She goes on to admit that she expected Minami to be a spoiled rich brat when she first showed up, but she managed to scale to the top of their entire school within months of joining the team. After Minami asks when she became an expert at giving speeches, Now gets embarrassed and challenges her to another game to prove that she hasn't gone soft. Later that day, Minami overhears some of the girls talking about how Now didn't get any tennis scholarships, which means she won't get to play the game after graduating anymore. Upon hearing this, Minami thinks back on all the help and advice she has received from her since the first day she joined and decides to make sure she graduates with a gold medal. Just a couple hours later, Arata returns home and meets one of the maids at the door before heading to the training room, where Minami has been working out since she got back. His cold expression scares her a bit until he asks why she didn't tell him that the tournament is in a week and promises to train her until then. As soon as she tells him not to worry, he asks why she has been hiding her injury, and this catches her off guard for a moment. She then tries to deny it, until he tells her that the maid saw her wrapping up her ankle in the bathroom earlier on. After saying that she should consider getting someone she can confide in, even if she doesn't want to train with him, he offers to help her stretch out a bit. Meanwhile, Uka pours herself a cup of tea and thinks back to Kotono's confession the other night. After she left, they all tried to blame the sudden outburst on the romance movie they had just watched. But Seiha told them to stop acting oblivious to the fact that Kotono was clearly serious about her feelings. Although they all agreed not to pass her feeling off as a joke anymore, Banri still suggested leaving Kotono to figure out what she really wants instead of trying to make it into a whole thing. While Uka continues thinking about the game room incident with him and what it might mean going forward, he starts stretching Minami's ankle to see where it hurts, but gets distracted by how much her body had changed over the years. After a couple more minutes of staring at her perfect abs, he snaps himself out of it and makes her promise not to push herself too hard so she won't do anything to affect her career. Shortly after also getting stretched out by her, he heads up to his room and runs into Kotono on the way up. Her weird silence causes him to think she is finally over everything that happened and probably just feels weird for hugging him in the bathroom. So he tells her to get changed into something warm and starts walking off. Just then, she asks if he was with Minami, and when he says yes, she asks if anything weird happened with her. The question throws him off balance, as he fears that she might know something about the injury, but he maintains his cool and asks what she means. She then freaks out and tells him not to worry about it before running off. Days later, Minami and her teammates arrive for the start of the inter-high tournament, and while taking on multiple high-ranking opponents from other schools, she continues thinking about how Now helped her when she first started and pushes through all the doubt to make sure they enter the finals. By late afternoon, they complete the tournament, and everyone on the team, including Now, thanks her for stealing the win, and she responds by thanking them for all the support and training. However, as they all start entering the bus, she feels a sharp pain in her ankle, and Now notices the sudden change in her expression. Back at home that night, Arata asks if she is strong enough for the finals, and she claims it's nothing to worry about because she already talked to her coach about getting professional help. A week later, Arata joins Banri at the breakfast table, and after the usual teasing, he asks if she has seen Minami since she should be leaving soon for the tournament. After Banri says she probably already left, Seiha shows up and asks if they have seen her because her tennis shoes are still at the door. The next moment, the others also come out and say they haven't seen her all morning, causing Arata to realize that she is missing. As they all begin to panic, she suddenly walks in and gets surprised by the shocked look on their faces. When Arata asks why she hasn't left for the finals, she tells them that she had to get some food from the store before saying that they don't have to worry about the contest because she won't be participating. Moments later, Arata goes into her room to ask if she is really okay, so she explains how their coach took her off the players list after Now told him about her injury. She then claims that it's no big deal and acts like she actually doesn't want to play, so he asks about the person she wanted to win for. This catches her off guard, but she still maintains the story of being perfectly okay with everything, so he leaves and immediately goes to talk with Shin. After he explains her unusual reaction to being benched, Shin tells him that she is definitely lying because he woke up earlier than usual and saw her bawling her eyes out in a hidden corner. He further explains how Minami always hides her true emotions to appear unfazed and strong in front of others, so Arata rushes back to her room and tells her to get ready for the match. Minutes later, they walk out the front door, and she gets surprised to see that they have all gotten dressed to support her. After they get inside, Banri begs everyone to keep the noise down because it's her first time driving. But while they continue arguing about the directions, Minami wonders if it's actually safe for her to compete and remembers how emotional she got when Now and the coach told her not to play. Just then, Arata decides to give a speech to increase her confidence. But after also warning her to drop the racket the moment her ankle starts hurting, he tells her to stop lying about how she actually feels because they will always support her regardless of how she performs. A couple minutes after the speech, they run into traffic and become even more worried than before because the finals have already started. To make matters worse, her team has already lost the first 2 matches, meaning that they only get 2 more shots at winning. After minutes of arguing over the best way to get her there on time, they notice the rental bikes parked by the side of the road, and Seiha quickly opens her account on the app. So Arata drags Minami out and starts pedaling as fast as he can. By then, Now has just managed to secure a win for the team, but just as they start to celebrate it, she takes one look at the rookie they chose to fill in for Minami and realizes that they won't be taking any trophies home. The next moment, Minami runs inside, And as she tries to catch her breath, Arata drops to his knees and starts begging the coach to let her play. After he promises that she will be careful not to damage her ankle, she also joins him to beg, so now agrees that she is fit to play and convinces their coach to give her permission. By the time she finally gets into position for the last match, all the fear she has been pushing down floods her mind and almost causes her to pass out. But upon hearing Shin and the others cheering her on, she locks in. As soon as the whistle blows, she channels all her focus into the racket and slowly racks up points against her opponent until one last serve secures the win. Unfortunately, they still lose the finals against the opposing school, so after the event gets concluded, she apologizes to everyone on the team for not showing up on time to help and masks the pain in her heart with a fake smile. As Now starts walking towards her, she prepares herself for a slap, but Now proceeds to thank her for helping their team qualify for the finals and says she will always treasure the time they spent training together. Shortly after that, Arata takes a walk around the venue to find her so they can go back home, and when he finally sees her lost in thought on a bench, she quickly puts up the usual facade and acts like the loss was no big deal. She then tells him about Nao's speech of gratitude and says she would have preferred if they called her useless instead of pretending like she actually helped the team. After once again claiming to not regret a thing, she starts walking off, but he pulls her back for a hug and reminds her that she doesn't have to fake it with him. The next moment, she falls apart and soaks his shirt in tears while admitting that she hates how all her hard work went down the drain. While taking a shower a couple days later, Minami remembers how Arata supported her throughout the entire match and starts to realize why Kotono wants his glizzy so badly. Meanwhile, Aka starts ranting about how the judges were a bunch of brain-dead boomers who didn't have any idea what they were doing. After telling Banri and Seiha that Minami should have definitely won, she asks Arata for his opinion, so he tells her to stop making an issue out of it and focus on the fact that Minami has no regrets. The next moment, Minami comes out, so Aka asks for her opinion as well. But Minami claims to be perfectly okay with how everything turned out and thanks them for showing up for her. While Aka continues freaking out, Minami sits down and tries to avoid looking at Arata, but he asks if she used warm water because she still has to focus on recovering. This causes the butterflies in her belly to go haywire, but she remains composed and responds to him like she usually would. Aka then decides to take her insanity a step forward by trying to replay exactly what happened during the finals. But the dog misunderstands this and gets excited to play with the ball, so Aka gets frustrated and throws it away. Just as it gets close to Minami's head, Arata saves it while holding her close, and while he immediately starts scolding Aka, Minami once again remembers the other evening, as well as Kotono's confession, before realizing that she is starting to feel the same way. Hours later, Aka suddenly goes to see Kotono in her room, and this surprises the step-bro addicts who initially thought they all found her weird for loving Arata. Around the same time, Minami tries to tell the dog about her new feelings, but when Arata suddenly shows up and asks what she is talking about, she tells him goodnight and runs off to avoid an embarrassing conversation. Back in Kotono's room, Aka starts looking around and acting like a tourist, so Kotono tells her to get straight to the point, and she admits that she came because of her confession the other night. After Oka asks if she is actually serious about loving Arata, Kotono tells her to stop pretending because she already knows the truth about her feelings for him. This initially shocks Aka, until Kotono explains the text she saw on the group, as well as what happened in the game room the other night. Aka then explains the entire conversation she had with him outside the mall that night, before reminding her that they never had any kind of romantic discussion in the game room, which obviously means that she doesn't want his glizzy yet. Upon hearing this, Kotono suddenly gets excited and apologizes for misunderstanding her relationship with Arata. Several nights later, Banri begs Aka and Seiya to escort her to campus, but they refuse and say they have other things to take care of. After minutes of pacing around while thinking of a solution, she sees Arata walking and immediately asks for his help. Shortly after that, they sneak into campus, and she explains how the security doesn't let anyone in past sundown. While walking inside, she tells him about an important document she left behind and says she only asked for his help because she is too scared to go on her own. He then asks why she even picked nursing as her major, because she will definitely see a ton of traumatizing stuff while working. But she claims she can handle it as long as it doesn't involve ghosts. As they get deeper into the building, she suddenly grabs his arm, but he realizes that her jugs are sucking his entire arm and asks if she can release him. This only causes her to get even more scared, so she squeezes harder and begs him not to let go. leaving him no choice but to control his Maximus Prime while leading her inside. A few moments later, she asks for a story to keep herself distracted, but he suddenly holds her mouth shut and drags her into a corner. When she tries to pull away from his magnum, he tells her to keep quiet until the guard walks past. However, after remembering that she won't get into any trouble since she is a student, he realizes that his arm has been wrapped around her jugs and quickly releases her before apologizing. He then takes a moment to think about how soft she felt before she reminds him that they still need to grab her stuff. Shortly after that, they get to a clubroom, and after turning on the lights, she grabs a stuffed animal, which causes him to wonder if they really came all this way for an incomplete doll. He once again asks why she is studying nursing, so she tells him about the day her class went to a hospital for a test. She saw a bunch of students playing with sick patients, and after learning that they were part of a volunteers club in the same college, she joined them and started making toys to give the patients whenever they go visiting. She then tells him about how bad she felt whenever she went to see their mom in the hospital years ago, and explains how a really kind nurse helped her discover her passion for healthcare services. On the way out, he asks why she didn't just tell him everything before they left home, so she apologizes but tells him not to complain since he got to experience the softness of her jugs. She immediately claims that it's just a joke, but he starts leaving without her to hide how embarrassed he feels. At school the following week, everyone in Auka's class receives their test results, and when some of the girls ask about her score, she claims it's the usual thing. So they start praising her as usual while she wonders how on earth she got a D. On Saturday morning, days later, Arata sees her about to head out with a full bag, so he asks about it and gets shocked when she says she is going to another town. He eventually convinces himself that she is probably trying to enjoy their 3-day holiday. But by Tuesday the following week, he starts to get worried because she still hasn't returned. While Banri and the others return to school as usual and try to act normal without her, Arata continues dealing with her friends in class, as they all express concern for her health and wonder why she would suddenly vanish. By evening, Auka takes a bath and finally packs up to leave, but at a certain point, she suddenly decides to stay another night and head back to the hotel. Back at the house minutes later, they all seriously start to worry about her, since she has never been the type to randomly vanish for days. But when Banri reminds them of a tracker she installed on her phone and reveals that she is currently at Mount Fuji, their concern turns to fear, because people usually go there to unalive themselves. After Shin says she could have just used a rope in the garden if she actually wanted to meet God, they all agree to do something to get her back, because her continued absence might cause more damage to her reputation in school. Shortly after that, Arata packs up some gear and promises to get her back in time for school tomorrow, but they all get worried for him, since it would be dark by the time he reaches Mount Fuji. Despite this, he claims it has to be done, so they wish him luck, and he immediately takes the next bus to the only station still open around Mount Fuji. While climbing up the trail a couple hours later, he realizes that she must have also walked through it on her own, and hopes she hasn't done something stupid to herself. Meanwhile, Minami, who has been tracking his phone since he left, has just gone to the kitchen for some water, and when Kotono shows up to ask if Arata will be okay, she reminds her that he is practically a gorilla with human skin. By the time he finally makes it to the mountain hotel, Auka gets shocked by the fact that he walked all the way from the station without a break, but he acts like it was nothing and asks for a spare bed before texting the others. Moments later, he gets to her room and regrets not booking a separate hotel before the memories of the night in the game room flood his mind. To make matters worse, she suddenly tells him to look away and starts changing, causing him to fight demons until she tucks herself into the blanket. With his mind back to its natural state, he asks why she would be gone for so long and says they have to be back by morning. But she tells him to forget about it and refuses to explain when he keeps asking why she left. After he also climbs into bed, she reminds him that their parents first met on the mountain, and Kaneem had to carry their mum down the mountain because she fell sick from being so high up. When Auka suddenly asks if he can accept the love of a sibling if they were soulmates, he gets shocked and asks why she would be bringing up something so weird. She then reminds him that Kotono is obsessed with him, and that causes him to relax a bit, since he initially thought she was looking for a way to get freaky. After asking why she came all the way out here again, he sees that she has already slept off and spends a couple minutes watching before covering her up. Early the next day, he wakes up to a note saying she has already gone home, but knowing how stubborn she can be, He calls Banri to make sure her phone is still on the mountain before setting out to find her. A little while later, two mountain climbers see her at the summit and wonder if she has a couple screws loose, because she has been showing up to that same exact spot over the last few days. As the mist starts picking up, they decide to head back and say something about a dangerous second trial before leaving. After a couple more minutes of staring at a pair of earrings, Auka gets disappointed and starts heading down as well. But a couple minutes later, she realizes that she is on a completely different trail and gets a little scared, because the mist has covered up all the signs. In an attempt to go back to the summit, she slips and falls into a ditch at the mountainside before realizing that her legs are too bruised up to climb. Meanwhile, Arata has just left the summit thinking she is probably back at the hotel. But when he returns, the owner tells him that she still hasn't shown up since she first left. He immediately calls Banri to get her exact location. But that becomes a problem, because her phone went out of range the moment she slipped off the trail. In a dream moments later, Auka remembers the day Kanin gave her the earrings and said they belonged to her mum, before telling her how they first met and also saying that she might meet her soulmate on the summit. Upon seeing that her power bank is out of juice, she realizes that she is actually stuck and quickly accepts that no one is coming to save her, since Arata isn't even her real brother. However, when one of the earrings falls out, she scrambles to find it, and the little reflection of light from it ends up drawing Arata's attention. But this also causes her to think he is the soulmate she came to find. Comment Alabama love story for the next part, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.